Love you, Mark.
Oh, hey, well, thank you everyone for coming here. My last days as a free person here in Vancouver, and as a Canadian being sent abroad to the United States for an activity I did here in Vancouver openly and transparently and proudly. I have to say I'm disappointed in my government. I'm a little disappointed in my country, but I remain a very positive and proud Canadian patriot. I'm proud of my Overgrow the Government revolution that we've started. 20 years ago when I began, even books and magazines in this country about marijuana were banned. There was no such thing as medical marijuana. There was no industrial hemp industry. We didn't have any hemp farms in this country. And in fact, only 24% of the Canadian population in 1990 when I started wanted to legalize marijuana, and now a majority of Canadians, 52%, want to repeal this terrible, insidious, evil prohibition that's been propped up by both the federal Conservative and Liberal governments for the last 45 years. It's seen 2 million Canadians criminalized, millions of their family members, very much like my wife today, have been made to suffer for a public policy that has no public benefit. It's the only thing we have in Canada that's existed for 45 years that's caused so much heartbreak and misery and torment to so many Canadians that has absolutely no benefit to any single Canadian or Canadian society as a whole. So I'm being made to pay. I did sell those seeds so that people could overgrow the government. I spent $4 million. I gave it away from 1994 to 2005 to drug addiction clinics, to politicians, to court challenges, to Supreme Court challenges, to global marijuana marches. That $4 million kick-started a movement that now is worldwide and has huge numbers and has a huge amount of support. My work is self-evident, I think. I'm the Prince of Pot for a good reason, in that I didn't hurt anybody. There's no victim here. I've probably run the largest scale revolution that has had no bodies. There are no victims, no dead people in my revolution. It's a revolution fronted by a beautiful plant, the world's most valuable plant, the world's most beloved plant. 170 million people love the cannabis plant. It won't hurt you. It won't kill you. It won't do what so many legal things will do, like tobacco, alcohol, prescription drugs, sugar, salt, basic commodities that kill people every day in this country, and they're entirely legal, and the people who distribute them and manufacture them will never be called into a court like I am to account for the people they've killed selling their products. I'm proud of everything I've done. I don't feel bad about anything. I won't be repentant. I won't be apologizing to any judge. I won't be making account for my work. I'll only regret that I wasn't able to do more, and that I leave this country when I leave this country, and you have an opportunity to stop that. The Justice Minister is going to have to sign off on my extradition. Tell him, don't do it. It's a betrayal of everything Canadian. It's a betrayal of our sovereignty. It's a betrayal of a good citizen myself who's never hurt anybody. There's no victim here. There's no crime here. There's an offense in law, but there's certainly no crime. The crime is that we have a government that continues to hand a huge business over to the underground, the criminal element, as a matter of public policy. The politicians who support this prohibition are supporters of organized crime. There's no way to get around that. The legislation that they passed in Parliament, Bill C-50, and all the other legislation that puts people in jail for drug use, for marijuana use, for growing marijuana, are immoral laws that manufacture crime. We are making criminals with laws like this, and we will continue to see this situation of gang violence get worse, and that our constitutional rights will be eroded, and that we will continue to see trouble on the streets, and trouble in our courts, and trouble in our jails, as long as we have this evil prohibition. I can only hope that Canadians will appeal to the Public Safety Minister, Peter Van Loan, and say, don't sign this extradition. You have to talk to the Minister of Justice, Rob Nicholson, and say, don't sign this extradition. And when they do sign, or if they do sign this extradition, they must be punished at the next election. It's very vital, if Canadians want to protect the sovereignty of this country, that they must repudiate the Conservative government and re-elect opposition parties who are more supportive of protecting Canadians both abroad and here at home, and our constitutional rights and our privileges and duties as a Canadian. I am a Canadian. I'm a proud Canadian. I did all my activities here in Canada. I haven't been to the United States in 16 years since I've been a seed seller, and I did so deliberately. I knew what I was doing. I'm proud of representing the cannabis culture, and if I have to be punished, by unjust laws and draconian punishments in a U.S. jail. Bear in mind, I'll be in a foreigner's jail in the United States, an alien jail. I won't even have common basic human rights that Americans have in this U.S. prison, which is full of people who are there from cartels and gangs, and I'll be amongst hardened criminals and very few Canadians and very few people who speak English. So it'll be a very difficult time for me. I look forward to your help in getting me transferred back to Canada. Under previous governments, transfers to Canada were automatic under the treaty we have with the United States, and I look forward to all of you helping me get returned to a Canadian jail so that I can be receive Canadian sentencing principles. I would be out on the street with you a year from now if I'm transferred back to Canada as a non-violent first-time offender in the federal system. And I want to introduce my wife, Jodie Emery, who will be taking over for me in my business activities and my political activities. She's a Green Party candidate for Vancouver South in the upcoming and I hope imminent and soon federal election. I'm looking forward to her representing our culture and our fight against prohibition, which should be every Canadian's fight, because prohibition only causes misery and harm to families. And I think my wife, over the months ahead, will be an example and demonstration of the kind of anguish and heartbreak it can bring to someone over something as innocuous and, I dare say, beautiful and beneficent as the cannabis plant. I introduce my wife, Jodie Emery.
You're here, Mark. This is a witch hunt.
Devastated, but I'm furious. Our Canadian government is abandoning Canadians abroad and sending Canadian citizens like my husband to a foreign country to be punished under severe laws. My husband never went to the United States to sell these seeds. The Vancouver police investigated Marc here for selling seeds, and the court said it's not worth prosecuting. Nobody would care about that. So the Vancouver police gave the information to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration and said, get this man and punish him in your country where we know it will be a worse punishment. And that's why they came after him and said, we want 3 indictments with mandatory minimums of 10 years each. That was 30 years minimum up to life that my husband was facing in U.S. prison. So to be forced into taking this 5-year plea deal, at least I'll see him again alive. But everybody needs to know this Conservative government had the chance over a year ago to sentence Marc to a term in Canada. The Americans said Marc can stay in Canada if the Canadian government sentences him there. And the Conservatives refused. They abandoned Marc. They're sending him south. They abandoned Canadians all over the world. And people should be furious about this. I've been crying endlessly, but now I'm angry. And everybody should be angry. I'll bring my husband back home to me, please.
Take a good look at the drug war, America. Take a good look at your war on drugs.
I'll take any questions if anyone has them. Just yell them out.
Mr. Emery, how confident are you that the government will either support or not object to your transfer back to a Canadian institution under the treaty?
Well, Todd Greenberg, the Assistant District Attorney of Western Washington, assured me that his office would not oppose any transfer of myself back to a Canadian prison. So the onus will be on the Conservative government, who have so far refused to repatriate anyone convicted in the United States of a marijuana offense. And that bodes poorly for me. It means that we have incentives in this country. If people want to protect the value of Canadian sovereignty, they should vote for another political party in the upcoming federal election and defeat the Conservative government, or we must convince the Conservative government to behave in a more responsible manner and repatriate Canadians under our treaty agreements. I don't have a lot of confidence that the Conservatives are sympathetic to Canadian sovereignty. I don't even believe most Conservatives like Canadians or like Canada, and so I'm cynical about what can be done there. But we have no other choice but to put the force of numbers to the government to this day. I want people to call the Minister of Justice and say, don't extradite him. I want them to reconsider Bill C-15 in the Senate, and I need Canadians to consider how much they value Canadian sovereignty and what they're willing to do about it.
Marc Emery, political support in Canada.
Yes. Well, I believe Libby Davies and Bill 6A will bring up something in Parliament this week on my behalf. I know the Bloc is very sympathetic. The Bloc's argument is this: if the Canadian government isn't willing to protect Marc Emery, then what's the purpose of being a Canadian? The sovereigntists in Quebec are saying it would be much better to be a member of a sovereign Quebec than a sovereign Canada if this is the value of the citizenship of this country. If I could be extradited for something as harmless as selling seeds to consenting adults, and I've never had a victim and I've never had a complaint, then what is the value of Canadian citizenship? That's something to ponder very greatly in Quebec right now, and the Bloc Quebecois will be bringing this up in the upcoming federal election. Is Canadian citizenship of any value? That will be their question posed in the upcoming election, and it's a very valuable question. In the meantime, the Liberal Justice critic Marlene Jennings last year said it was wrong to extradite me, and I expect that the Liberal government and the Bloc and the NDP and the Green Party will all be supportive of repatriating me back to Canada.
Mr. Emery, two questions if I may. Is the transfer of your company to your wife, is it completed?
No, it'll be completed later on this week.
Okay. Second question, do you see this ordeal as a setback for the movement to legalize or decriminalize marijuana, or do you see it as a kind of blessing in disguise, if I may say so?
Well, it'd have to be a big disguise if it's a blessing, but I look forward to people getting upset about my incarceration. Sometimes, in order to get change, you need a crisis. No change happens in a vacuum, and I'm going to need a crisis. I'm going to need a crisis to help change this government. We're going to need a crisis to help repeal this prohibition, and we're going to need a crisis in order to bring me back to Canada. I'm hoping I have millions of supporters in Canada and the United States who will make an awful lot of noise and make it politically unpalatable to keep me both in the United States and keep me incarcerated.
And make no mistake about it, Marc Emery is a political prisoner. The day of his arrest, the United States Drug Enforcement Administration said Marc Emery, the leader of a marijuana legalization movement, was arrested. This is a significant blow to the marijuana legalization movement. They went on to say, and I want to hold this up here because this is damning. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of Emery's illicit profits are known to have been channeled to marijuana legalization groups active in the United States and Canada. Drug legalization lobbyists now have one less pot of money to rely on. They also say Marc Emery has been designated as one of the Attorney General's most wanted international drug trafficking organizational targets, one of only 46 in the world and the only one from Canada. When you consider that there are people moving tons of cocaine and damaging, harmful drugs and weapons and all sorts of horrible things, and Marc Emery, who sold seeds and gave away every dollar, that he's the United States #1 drug trafficking target out of Canada, this is insulting, it's an outrage, and we know from this statement it's all about it being a significant blow to the marijuana legalization movement. It's about our magazine, it's about money, it's about lobbying, it's about legalizing marijuana. And what Marc Emery did, there's no mention of victims. There's nobody hurt, there's nobody ripped off, there's no harm done except for what's being done to Marc Emery, to the people who love him. This is very important. Marc Emery is a political prisoner. Look around you and you know these people believe it. People all over the world today and for days on end are standing in solidarity with Marc. They're supporting him because they know this is unjust, and we all know it's unjust. America, the government, is evil at times. It does evil things to people. It destroys lives. And the Canadian Senate said in 2002 that the continued prohibition of cannabis jeopardizes the health and well-being of Canadians more so than does the substance itself. Prohibition is the problem. Marc Emery, my husband, is a victim of this war on drugs. I am a drug war widow, and there are hundreds of thousands of others out there who suffer in silence because their loved ones are put behind bars with a stigma attached to being a criminal. But Marc Emery is not a criminal. He was breaking a law openly and defiantly to say this is wrong and we need to change the laws, and nobody should go to prison for a plant. Absolutely nobody.
Hear, hear. Yeah.
What's the process now, Marc? What's happening after?
What happens today is I will be delivered up to the court and handcuffed at about 10:15. and they'll be put in North Fraser Detention Center. Actually, it's a remand center, and I will be awaiting the decision of the Attorney General, the Minister of Justice, to sign the extradition order. If he does not sign the extradition order, I will be released at some point, and if he does sign the extradition order, I will be sent to Seattle, where I will be held for a few weeks and then sentenced to this 5-year term and then sent to a sorting station in Oklahoma City, where I will be then sent out to a federal penitentiary somewhere in the United States. And that itself will take several weeks to go from North Fraser to my final destination in some U.S. federal penitentiary.
Mark, what do you think your appearance in the Seattle court will do to the U.S.
Well, I think it will invigorate our American supporters. A lot of Americans are very embarrassed, millions of Americans are very embarrassed, that their government, which is trillions of dollars in debt, still has the money to go chase down a Canadian, extract him from his country, bring him to the United States for selling seeds to consenting U.S. adults who are guaranteed under the Constitution of the United States life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I certainly help them do that, and I also help them pursue their good health. Through the seeds I sold, we gave thousands of seeds away to American medical patients for free. We helped establish a lot of the medical marijuana strains and genetics that are in California today that are distributed legally under the California state legislation, Proposition 215. So, I'm just very, very disappointed in the United States government. The so-called beacon of freedom in the world is behaving like a tyrannical dictatorship, chasing down people like me whose politics are really what this is all about. This isn't about marijuana. You can get all the marijuana you want in California legally. 500,000 Californians have medical marijuana cards to go buy marijuana at any of the thousands of locations throughout the state of California, and hundreds of places sell seeds like I sold, and you can buy them in California right now. Anything I sold you can buy in California. So it's really hypocritical to extradite a Canadian to the United States under the circumstances of the current situation in California.
So you're hoping for a huge outcry. What happens if you don't get that outcry? What happens if you don't reinvigorate?
Well,
is this the end for...
No, I will though. I'm the most recognizable person in this movement around the world. We had rallies last Saturday, 9 days ago, in 130 cities around the world, including Panama City, Copenhagen, Berlin, Dublin, New York City, Washington, D.C. So I know that there's going to be constant agitation for my release and transfer back to Canada, and I expect that to come from Canadians, Americans, and people all around the world. I'm going to end up causing a lot of disturbances in the body politic as a result of just one person being incarcerated. So I have every confidence that the American government's going to notice that I'm in their jails unjustly, and that the onus is on them to do something to reverse that.
But you've had a series of failures already. I mean, you ran for politics, you didn't get in, you started a number of political parties, that didn't happen. Why isn't this just another failure?
Well, because your goals don't get actualized overnight. Your goals, I've been doing this for 20 years, and it's taken 20 years to move Canadian public opinion to where a quarter of the public supports legalization to now a majority of the public. And if we had a functional democracy, marijuana would be legal already, because the majority of Canadians want to legalize marijuana. The last Angus Reid poll said 52% of Canadians, and get this, 65% of British Columbians want to legalize marijuana to stop gang violence and all the crime associated with the underground and prohibition. So we've already won the battle of hearts and minds of Canadians. Now we need Canadians to go and not just believe it, but go march to the polls and do something about that knowledge. That's what we lack. We lack the will to get out and vote and make what we believe happen as a reality. Instead, we're letting rural Canadians elect a rump party like the Conservative government, and they're dictating a completely different agenda than the one Canadians really do want.
Are we going to pass mandatory minimums here, people?
Mandatory minimums have already passed the House of Commons, and will put thousands more Canadians in jail if it passes the Senate this week or next. So our job as activists is to oppose Bill C-15 in the Senate and call your senator today.
Mark, how do you feel you'll be treated in the U.S. foreign prison system?
I've always been treated well by guards and inmates in Canada, but I will tell you this, prisons in Canada are run very professionally. I was arrested for my marijuana civil disobedience 23 times. I've been jailed 18 times in 8 out of 10 provinces. I spent 3 months in jail in Saskatoon on a charge of passing one joint. So I have a lot of experience with jails, inmates, and guards, and I can tell you that all Canadian inmates to me have always been polite and friendly, as have all Canadian jail guards and administrators. So the experience in the United States might well be very different, but I have nothing to say negative about my incarceration in Canadian jails other than they were run professionally.
Mark, when you finish your sentence, will you continue your activities where you've left off?
Well, you can never predict the future. I think it's arrogant to tell people what I'm going to be like when I get out. I hope I'm not negatively effective and I can still maintain my idealism. And after I got out of a 3-month sentence in Saskatoon Correctional, I didn't like being there while I was there, but I had many epiphanies and revelations about myself and about the future of this country and activism and my fellow inmates and the guards who guarded me. And I came to a lot of self-awareness in jail. So I hope I can make good use of that time in more awkward circumstances in the United States.
What makes you think that the support you have will be enough to bring you back to a Canadian institution when that support wasn't enough over these past 4 years on either side of the border to quash the indictment, to stop the extradition in the first place?
Well, the good thing is, as time goes by, more and more facts about my case will come out, that the Canadian government refused to allow me to serve my time in Canada, that the Vancouver Police Department openly collaborated with DEA to get me charged in a U.S. court and a U.S. indictment. Rich Coleman, the provincial attorney general back in 2005, knew all this was happening and cooperated with the Americans. The Solicitor General, Rich Coleman, at the time, cooperated with Americans. The Vancouver Police Department, under Jamie Graham as chief constable, collaborated and cooperated with the Americans to put me away. Jamie Graham has boasted to me himself personally that he was proud of all the activities he took part in order to put me in jail and to give me the reward I so richly deserve. He told me that himself personally. So the Vancouver Police Department have openly collaborated with foreign powers to take me away and put me in a U.S. jail because they could not achieve satisfaction here. I heckled the drug czar here in Vancouver in 2002, and he, within days, convinced the Vancouver Police Department to have an investigation be launched. So the more the facts will come out, the more Canadians should be indignant and will be indignant. And I have millions of supporters. It doesn't make sense to keep me in a U.S. jail if people are going to be harassing congressmen and the Bureau of Prisons and the Attorney General of the United States, as well as all their respective correspondents in Canada. If they want to listen to a million people rave on over the phones and in email and faxes and letters for the next year, then I welcome that challenge. We'll see what happens. But I think our support is going to be numerous, loud, angry, hostile, and ready to vote.
Ready to vote.
Woo.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Anything anyone would like to say? Then maybe I'll let my wife wrap up. Would you like to say something final before we go? Because you'll be the one staying behind.
Prayers are with you, Mark.
Thank you. Okay. Well, are you speechless? All right, go. So well, we'll be going into the courtroom now. It's probably the last time I'll be giving a press conference for a while. And if I get a chance to speak, yes, sir.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to signal somebody back there.
If I get a chance to speak again, it'll be from a jail calling collect. So people will have to talk to Jodie and see what arrangements can be made for me to talk to you, the media, wherever I happen to be in the world. And I look forward to coming back, and I hope everyone will give my wife all due respect and attention, and I admire her greatly for her great courage in handling this. She married me knowing that one day this would come, and I apologize to her for bringing her all this pain and distress. I thank everyone for coming, and I'm going to go into the courtroom now, and I'm a proud person, a proud Canadian. I'm pleased with what I did, and I look forward to speaking to you all when I get back. Hopefully only a year, but perhaps 2-3 years from now, or whenever it is. Thanks very much.
I want to
love you, Mark. We love you, Mark.
Love you, Mark. Love you, Jodie.
Here's your war on drugs, America. There's your war on drugs. Another family destroyed. Thank you, America. Thank you, DEA. Thank you, Vancouver Police. Media, get on your jobs and start reporting and exposing this conservative garbage. It's a witch hunt.
Free Marc Emery! Free Marc